The aftermath of Nikola Jokic's flagrant foul on Markieff Morris has torn the NBA community apart, sort of. We'll rehash the latest Jokic apology and if Morris faces some kind of punishment. All that and more coming up next.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Wednesday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However, you may be listening via YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. This episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. You know what I'm not loving, though, Wes, is this reaction to the Morris Jokic incident. Recorded both an episode of Locked On Heat and Locked On NBA last night because we always host Tuesday's episode. It just happened to be on the night when the Heat were dominating the news cycle. Half of Serbia in our mentions today defending Jokic. Not what I expected. What's been your reaction to the aftermath of the incident from last night's loss?
Yeah, I guess my initial reaction is surprise based on the level of verbal violence that is sort of dominating the conversation, dominating the comments under the Locked On NBA YouTube page, or the Locked On Heat YouTube page, even the amount of dislikes that we're getting on these videos, the amount of stuff on Twitter that is out there, and I suppose just this culture of just tough guyness that I didn't expect. That usually, I know that we work in the world of sports, David, but I usually just don't see this kind of stuff. This tough guy, faux jock mentality in our mentions and around the conversations that we have. And maybe we've lived in our own little bubble, our little Locked On Miami Heat bubble, whatever it is. But you get a comment like this from John Thenum over here, who commented on one of our YouTube videos. Both you guys are soft AF. Markieff Morris started it and Jokic finished it. And for the most part, a lot of the comments that I've been seeing in response to us, in response to other people, have basically been a version of that where, hey, this is just what you do, man. This is what Jokic had to do this in order to protect himself and his teammates. And we'll get to Jokic's apology here in a minute, but that's essentially what he said in his kind of fake apology that he made. That's the part that surprises me, and it surprises me because I feel like it's pretty problematic of how we have this discussion. And I do think that you and I reacted strongly both on Locked On Heat yesterday and Locked On NBA as well, because we saw this happen in real time. And in real time, it's really scary. Not just scary because you see the level of violence with which Nikola Jokic hit Markieff Morris, but how long Markieff Morris stayed on the ground and how clearly he was in pain. This was not theatrical. This was not flopping. This was not something that he just put a show on in order to draw a flagrant and a game that was already lost, by the way. No, this was the stretcher came out. This was real. The fact of him just flexing his hands, flexing his fingers over and over just to maintain some sort of feel in his fingertips, I suppose. That stuff is really scary. And yeah, I think you and I came out strong with that. But rewatching it today, I do think Markieff Morris, I think it was a very hard foul on Nikola Jokic. I think it deserved the flagrant. It probably deserved the flagrant too. Based on all of the emotions that were occurring afterwards, I thought it was right for the referees to go ahead and just eject Morris, eject Jokic, and just get them out of there. Just get them off the court or anything near the court, right? I agree with the referee doing that. But to say that was the same as what Jokic did or somehow deserved that, you could have handed, and this is what I said yesterday, you could have handed Markieff Morris the flagrant 2, and that would have been penalty enough. That's why we have that system in place. But we can't accurately confirm whether or not he did that with 100% intent to injure Jokic. What we do know is that Jokic clearly intended to injure Markieff Morris, and that to me
retaliate.
To retaliate. And that's what's problematic. And again, you go back to the response here and just how many people are on Jokic's side. To me, it's just shocking. It is.
I agree with you. A lot to unpack there. Even as we were talking our way through what we were going to talk about in today's segment, it
Yeah.
just feels like this is, and this is just for the sake of our listeners and viewers, like we have no idea exactly how to approach it because there's been so much backlash. There's so much dissecting of this on almost every level. Whether you were involved as a Heat fan, whether you were just a part of NBA media, whether you're just a casual viewer on our YouTube comments, like the level of vitriol was absolutely not something I expected. And look, you bring up a lot of good points. One, the culture of the tough guy absolutely has been a little strange to me. Like that people feel very vindicated in Jokic's retaliation is very, very surprising. And people bringing up Morris's past and his history of fake tough guyness and everything else like that, even as you're typing in your 180 characters on Twitter or whatever it is, like that's just ridiculous to me. Is to accuse Morris of being a tough guy or a cheap shot artist throughout his career, even as you're saying, yeah, he deserves that completely.
Right.
I don't know. And look, it's funny that we're getting these kind of takes because both of us have been labeled throughout our tenure as media members as being completely even keeled, almost to like a detriment, because most
Yeah.
of our fan base would want to hear us be much more passionately involved in the teams that we cover and things of that sort. But the reality is that we're trying to present things in a much more, again, even keeled perspective. And
We come
so
from a journalistic background here, and I think that's what was so shocking about this is that this was just outside of sort of the realm with which we deal, right? Like
sure,
this is not something that you and I are used to seeing. I mean,
right.
the NBA has done a really good job since Malice in the Palace. This is something you brought up on one of our shows yesterday. I don't remember which one, but
They all blend
um,
together after 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
that's right. Also, yeah, we were recording it at 2 o'clock in the morning, so relax, people. But no, they've done a really great job since the Mouse in the Palace incident to basically expunge this out of the game. I mean, you go so as far as Amari Stoudemire in the conference finals, stepping onto the court and being suspended for a game for that. There have been a few incidents here and there, but the NBA has largely gotten away from any of this, and
Yeah.
this was everything about this was surprising to me. And I think that you and I had to process it in real time. That's kind of the tough thing about the jobs that we have is,
Right.
I think a lot of people woke up this morning and watched it and saw some of the takes and stuff. Like you and I
Right.
didn't get to do that. We had to basically
Right.
react in real time, not once, but on two different episodes of Locked On NBA and Locked On Heat. And I think that's what came through in our episodes yesterday, was just the level of shock
Yeah.
that was here. Now, going forward and kind of seeing this through a broader lens and all the responses, whether it be from other former players, the Morris twins themselves, Jokic's brothers, Jokic himself, there's a lot of humor now sort of in the aftermath of this, which I would like to talk about because, I don't want to retaliate with hate speech to people who have come at us with hate speech and, calling us soft and stuff like that. Just to me isn't interesting. And it's not a level of discourse that I want to go into.
Right.
But I think that there's still a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I'm glad you brought that up because regardless of where you stand in your fandom of Nikola Jokic or Denver or anti-Morris or anti-Mori, like there's no need to be insulting. There's certainly no need to be derogatory or anything like
Yeah.
that. Disagree or agree with our takes, you keep that shit to yourself, basically. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is Twitter, this is YouTube, this is the age of social media where you can post a lot of things that you feel comfortable doing, but that there's no place for that. And
Where do you think that's where the tough guy thing is coming from? Like this, is it just because people can hide behind comments? Like again, I don't mean this to attack anybody. I really am not interested in doing that.
Well,
I'm
it's funny.
genuinely
No,
curious.
it's funny because they're saying, as we were talking about Jokic probably meriting a 1 game suspension, it's like I dare you to say that to his face as you're insulting us via Twitter or YouTube. It's like, how can you take a stance like that? Like we what should we do? Go talk to Joker and insult him himself. It's like, first of all, I won't, but we both have talked to Jokic at some point. Like we've seen him
Yeah.
in scrubs, we've seen him in the locker room. Like
I've talked to
and this
Jokic
is
several times. He's a very nice guy to deal with.
yeah,
And again, I'll go back to, we were shocked that this happened. We weren't like,
right,
part and parcel with Nikola Jokic. Here we go again. Like, no, we were shocked. I
Right.
said that he had a history. He does. This is not something I wouldn't say to his face. I would say, hey, you probably deserve that suspension. You know what Nikola Jokic would say? I probably did deserve that suspension. I would tell Nikola Jokic, hey, you have a history of doing things like this. Nikola Jokic would say what? He said this to other reporters. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's something I'm trying to work on. We should just play this really quick. This was his
Let's
his
save that. Let's save that for the
okay.
next segment. Start it off because there's a lot to go from there. And look, it's been an interesting, not even 24 hours at this
Yeah.
point, but we'll continue to talk about the aftermath of Nikola Jokic and his hard foul on Markieff Morris and the potential ramifications from the NBA. But first, one thing that you never have to worry about is the great taste of Built Bar. Look, I love Thanksgiving. I've talked about it here before. We've talked about our favorite foods, the side dishes that everybody loves so much, all the good food and treats. But maybe you just want a yummy dessert on Thanksgiving. I know a lot of people like pies and things of that sort. I think we've talked about this before, Wes. Where do you stand on pecan pies?
Well, I'm surprised you remember that I love pecan pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably been a few Thanksgivings since we talked about this. Yeah, that's the number one. That's the number one Thanksgiving pie. And look, don't come at me in the comments now being like, "Screw you and your pecan pie. It's insulting
Pumpkin
to
pie.
apple pie." Like, look, I don't love baked apples, so apple pie it's not my favorite thing. But a pumpkin pie, a pecan pie, cherry pie, blueberry pie, I love all of it. But pecan pie number one.
Yeah, but you know what? If you want to pass on the pecan pie, and there might be good reason to do so, it's the perfect time for Built Bars. It's the new holiday dessert. All of the taste and none of the guilt. If you want to get an indulgent treat, and something again, part of the holidays, Built Bar is the way for you. Replace the coconut cream pie with coconut Built Bar or the raspberry Built Bar instead of the raspberry pie, something that a lot of people apparently eat. Lots of good flavors to replace any pie, maybe even pecan. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% real chocolate. Built Bar is a great option for when you're hungry. If Thanksgiving isn't coming soon enough, go for a Built Bar or maybe two. Share some at family gatherings. These can get often very awkward for a lot of people. If you don't want to, if you want to break the ice and just get everybody on the same page, there's one thing that brings everybody together: the great taste of Built Bar. So, new surprises all month, limited time flavors arriving at built.com regularly. So check the site often. There's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendar. Black Friday will be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and you get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15, but only if you go to built.com.
All right, back here with Locked On Heat. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. David, I want to get to the Nikola Jokic sound here in a minute, but you said that raspberry pie is something that people apparently eat. Have you not had raspberry pie?
I've never had raspberry pie. No, I
Is
I
this your
grew
first
up in
time hearing of
Miami.
it?
I think I've heard of it before. Look, I grew up in Miami. My parents are Cuban. Pie was like they never had pie in Cuba, that's for sure. But when they came to this country, pumpkin pie was the only pie that ever graced our table at Thanksgiving. And eventually, I tried pecan pie, and like you, it is my favorite.
What's the dessert of choice for your family growing up
Uh,
on Thanksgiving?
Flan.
Flan. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, flan. You can't go wrong with flan.
I looked up ordering the Joe's key lime pie because I wanted to
Oh
bring
yeah.
that over to my parents because that's obviously famous. It's $70 to get that delivered. One pie is $70, and they're like, "We'll cut you a deal if you order two pies for $100." And I was like, $50 a pie hardly sounds like a screaming deal.
I thought you were going to tell me two pies for 140 because I would really like that. That seems much more in line with Joe Stone crowds. Yeah, one for 70, two for 140.
Right,
Or act
two for
now.
150. There you go. We promised the Nikola Jokic sound. This is his apology after the game. We'll discuss it right after you hear it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a stupid play, I feel bad. I'm not supposed to react that way, but it's in the middle of the game. I got hit. I saw him, but I didn't even I thought it's just gonna be like a take foul, So and he kind of bumped me, and I was like, that was a little bit like I think it was a dirty play, and then I just needed to protect myself. I felt it bad, and I'm not supposed to react that way. First of all, to not get thrown out of the game, I cannot help my team win the game, which is the most important thing. But it happens. I feel bad. I'm not supposed to react that way, but other way I need to protect somehow myself. probably if I didn't react that way, it wouldn't be even a flagrant foul or whatever. So it was just in a moment of whatever adrenaline, running up and down. It's reaction.
That's the sound there. That's one of those, David. That's one of those apologies that kind of started as an apology and then it quickly turned into an explanation of his actions. Like that.
Right.
That doesn't really work. I mean, that doesn't work anyway. Like, you can't tell your boss, like, hey, man, I'm sorry I was late, but, like, I was eating cereal in the morning, and if I didn't eat that cereal, I was going to be hungry all day, and if I was hungry, you're not going to want a hungry worker because now I'm not going to eat. So that's why I was 2.5 hours late to work today. Sorry I missed our two most important clients in the big meeting, but look, that's just, it was in the middle of the morning, and I had to feed myself. Like, it just doesn't necessarily work to me. That comes off to me. I think he was remorseful. I do, but I do also think that he's like, I'm going to defend myself anyway here. Like, it just didn't work as an apology.
That's the part that gets to me. Like, what defense? Like, who's coming at him? Like, Morris delivers the foul and walks away. What's there to defend yourself? Like, I at this point, like, this is the first time I've seen this. Like, I saw tweets about it, but I wanted to save my reaction for this because this is the first time I've seen this video. And you're absolutely right. It's like one of these, well, I'm sorry you got offended by me calling you an asshole. I'm sorry. Well,
if I tell my fiance, look, I'm sorry I cursed you out for absolutely no reason, but in my defense, I was standing in the kitchen and I felt like it. Like, it was like, it doesn't work this way. Like, as soon as you start the but and then explain, it no longer is an apology.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think there was any need for him to defend himself. He brings up an interesting point that I was thinking about in a previous segment. Like, if Markieff Morris doesn't get hit by Jokic, would they have called it anything more than just a personal foul? I don't think they would have called it a flagrant. I don't think it would have been under review at all. What kind of built it up was the retaliation from Jokic.
That was his point, right? He's like, I almost had to retaliate in order to get the flagrant 2 called. And my thing was, like, you were up 20, dude.
Yeah. Like,
you what do you want? That?
What do you want the 8th guy on the rotation kicked out of the game for? Like, were you going to go after Dwayne Dedmon next? I mean, damn you, Caleb Martin. Where are you?
The whole thing seems really strange to me. But and it was that, and then so he's defending his actions, and then you saw former players, Richard Jefferson and JJ Reddick, go on to their personal platforms and also sort of defend it in the same way, basically saying, like, look, Markieff Morris hit him first, and this is just what happens. And players are going to protect themselves. Players are going to retaliate. JJ Reddick went so far on First Take and to say something like, I'm all here for the pettiness. I'm like, dude, this is more than just pettiness. This was like I'm here for pettiness. Like, nobody loves petty in the NBA as much as I do. Like, I'm all for, like, just harmless pettiness, but this was harmful. And that to me was sort of the difference. I don't know. I'm also not a former NBA player, and I'm willing to acknowledge that. And I haven't been in these locker rooms, and I haven't been on the court, and I haven't felt the emotions that the way that they are heightened in those specific instances. But I just can't imagine. I don't care how competitive you are. You're up 20. I can't imagine that tempers were flared that high. I can't imagine that. Like, there are a lot of former players out there that, I mean, I'm sure there are some that are agreeing with Richard Jefferson and JJ Reddick. There's a lot that aren't. Also, Udonis Haslem going out and saying, look, it has nothing to do with how hard the foul was. You just never you never hit somebody from behind. You never hit them from behind their back. I think there are probably a lot of players who are feeling that way too. You know what I mean?
Yes. There probably will be, unfortunately, also some latent xenophobia there because Jokic, as a European player, might be accused of being a cheap shot artist and things of that sort. And I'm a little surprised, honestly, that Jefferson and Reddick condoned his actions as completely as they did. It's weird. Look, we were talking about this in the previous segment, and I just can't seem to get away from it. Like, in real time. Like, even I was thinking about it today because I was so surprised at all these reactions from people, defending Jokic. And I'm thinking to myself, man, was the Heat broadcast particularly biased? Did they not slow it down enough so that we could see Morris laying into Jokic in a particular way that made it seem much more egregious than it actually did? Again, in real time at nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, what we saw was Jokic kind of flail, get hit by Morris, and that was kind of bang bang almost over in an instant. And then as Morris is walking away, this really quick, decisive retaliation from Jokic. And that's the part that kind of stuck with us. I don't know. There's a lot to break down.
No, it was a hard foul. It was a really hard foul. It deserved a flagrant. That happens almost every other game, though. Stuff like this doesn't happen every other game. And now We talk about the aftermath and all of this. The Jokic brothers now are on Twitter. The Morris twins are now on Twitter. Well, now I believe Marcus Morris is getting off of Twitter because his mom told him to. There's a lot to get into that. The Heat and the Nuggets rematch November 29th. We'll look ahead to that as well. But first, if you want to bet on that game, do it at betonline.ag, back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all of the basketball and football action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use that promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, baseball postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage on all of these amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Just a reminder that you can always reach us via email at lockdownheat@gmail.com or via Twitter using the hashtag AskLHeat. You can, of course, always reach out to us via direct messages. And make sure to please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get them, because you want the best content available, and we're the ones providing it for you. So absolutely follow up on that. Look, I know a lot of people are interested in what's going to happen for the rest of this 5-game road trip, 4 games left on this trip. And, no other place to get that kind of feedback and all the things that you need to know than right here over at Locked On Heat. We were talking a little bit more about the aftermath of the Morris incident with Nikola Jokic and what happens next. Right now, as of our recording, no decisive action from the NBA yet. Well, I'm not sure if there's going to be a suspension for Jokic. We both argued yesterday that it seems likely he'll be suspended. I don't think Morris will get suspended, and I know a lot of people seem to think otherwise. Have you changed your perspective now after, in the clarity of day? Do you still think it's likely that Joker gets suspended and that Morris is not?
I think what we'll see is Nikola Jokic gets suspended for multiple games, and maybe Markieff Morris gets 1 game, just again because the NBA has a reputation to kind of go better safe than sorry in these instances. So I could see if they just wanted to do 1 game for Morris and just like, look, let's just slap everybody on the wrist and try to move on and make this the least amount of a deal as possible, because suspending Jokic and then sort of inflaming that anti-Morris side of this argument, I suppose, might kind of rile emotions again. And so maybe it's just easier. Hey, let's give like Morris 1, give Jokic 2, and call it a day. Maybe there's something that happens with that. But like I said, I mean, by the time people even see this, that we might not even know what's going to happen. But what I'm more interested in is what happens November 29th, because now so you've got the Jokic brothers on Twitter saying responding to Marcus Morris going onto Twitter saying, hey, noted, basically saying like, I'm going to remember this. And then of course, referring to his twin brother, Markieff. And then you've got the Jokic brothers who, like, you read that Lee Jenkins profile. These are guys who used to hold Nikola Jokic's arms down and throw knives at his head. Okay. That's the kind of people that we're dealing with. We saw them last year in the playoffs, kind of almost trying to get out of the stands and fight people. I mean, like, these are tough guys, right? They just said, on Twitter, you should leave this to Marcus Morris. You should leave this the way it is instead of publicly threatening our brother. Your brother made a dirty play first. If you want to make a step further, be sure we will be waiting for you. Signed, Jokic brothers, which is like, I don't know, might as well be signed the Mario brothers. Like, they're just like cartoon characters almost at this point. But now you've got that. You've got Markieff getting involved. You got Marcus getting involved. Then you got Marcus signing off, basically piecing out from social media altogether because his mom said like nothing good is going to come from this. There's a lot of stuff happening. We've got 20 days between now and the Denver game, but I think that there's still going to be a lot of intrigue November 29th when the Nuggets visit the Miami Heat.
Okay, should they schedule? I don't even watch wrestling anymore. I know it's still a thing. Should they kind of arrange for some kind of a big bash here? I think the two brothers versus the two brothers. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Well, I think it's currently scheduled for NBA TV. I think you just move this thing to pay-per-view altogether.
Nice. I like it. I kind of half joking, but probably not now. In retrospect, shouldn't have done that. But I figured that maybe Udonis Haslem would probably get some early minutes on the 29th as a scene of some kind of a retaliatory move. Obviously, not very likely. Like the fact that he played last year against Philadelphia, it was the last home game of the season, if we all recall. Miami already pretty clearly in the playoff picture at that point, and it was later in the season. It didn't really matter as much. This isn't baseball. You can't just bring somebody in here to throw at an opposing player's head and beat them.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I
it's not
don't think
hockey where you can just bring somebody in, just throw the gloves down before the ref even puts the puck in play, right? Like, it
right.
doesn't work that way.
Right. So yeah, I don't actually expect UD to get any kind of playing time there on the 29th, but we'll both be there. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really tense atmosphere.
Will the Jokic brothers be there? Do you think that the Heat should allow them even in the
No,
building?
no, they won't. They can't. Like this organization, no, they don't want it. They don't want to bring that crap there. They don't want. I mean, not calling the Jokic brothers crap. They don't want that. They want everybody to be able to enjoy themselves. I can't imagine a world where those two 7-footers, find a way to maybe they'll get their tickets on StubHub or something like that. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but they'll just show up and all of a sudden, what can Heat security do? Are they going to keep them out of the game? It's going to be crazy. Look, that's the first game of the Denver road trip. They're going to be in Miami. They'll be rested, no excuses. This will be just like what Miami did when they went over into Denver. The first game of their road trip, they played Milwaukee at home on the 26th and then on the 29th. So 3 days rest to prepare for a very tense situation against Miami. So let's kind of take a step back before looking ahead to the 29th. Let's say Morris does get suspended. Who fills in for him against the Lakers on Wednesday? Because I think that's a huge thing. Oh, and a reminder also that we'll be doing a live stream of that game as well.
Yes.
Following the game, we'll be jumping on board with about 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, just as we did against the Dallas Mavericks last week. So that was a fun event. A lot of people responded to that very favorably. So we'll be doing it again for the Lakers. A big game there.
We look forward to talking to people about the game too. So you can jump on. We'll have the comments open.
Yes.
We're just really excited to engage with all of you and just talk about the game. But I think it falls to Caleb Martin if Morris misses some time. I think PJ Tucker, you probably see an uptick in his minutes. Dwayne Dedman, you could see an uptick in his minutes. Do you see maybe a Bam Adebayo, Dwayne Dedman front court for a couple minutes here and there? Like, there's just not that many options given the Heat's injuries and everything that they don't have available to them right now. I think you see a lot of Jimmy Butler at the 4 type of stuff, maybe a lot more Duncan Robinson and Tyler Herro playing together. There's different ways, but ultimately I think we'll probably see a little bit more small ball. I think that Spo will probably be a little reluctant to go with like that Twin Towers lineup setup. But
and no updates yet either on Max Strus. We've heard that he's been upgraded to questionable. We're not sure exactly about his timetable for returning. He might be available. That would be nice. A nice addition though Martin has kind of stepped up and played some decent minutes here and there in place of Strus. It would be nice to have another guy who can come in there, stretch the floor, and provide just another athletic wing as an option for Eric Spoelstra. Any other final takeaways before we move on here? Because again, we could probably talk about this for a 2-hour segment here, but I think it's time to kind of put a bow on the situation.
Yeah, look, I think we'll get some of the news on the suspensions here in a little bit if there are any. I think honestly this is a story that's going to fizzle out. If not by the end of today, by the end of the week, and certainly by the 29th. If we remember last year, the Jimmy Butler, TJ Warren stuff was sort of a big deal, and then the Pacers and the Heat played, and everybody's like, "Oh, what's going to happen?" And just nothing happened at all, like just nothing. They just played the basketball game. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think Nikola Jokic is obviously an MVP player, one of the best players in the league. Jimmy Butler, same thing. I do think that there's just going to be some sort of mutual respect. Or just maybe a wantingness to just move past this and get on with your own individual seasons. I just kind of interesting to talk about, funny to kind of laugh at certain parts of this. Obviously, you hope to never see something like that actually happen on a basketball court again. But I do think this is one of those news stories that are just going to, by the time these two teams meet again, it'll be a talking point briefly. And I think we'll be, I think it'll just end up being, water under the bridge by then.
Well, that does it for today's episode. Again, remember to jump on tomorrow when we take on the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll be there to provide a full recap of that game. So make sure you jump on board there and leave comments, questions. We love interacting with you during that whole process. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to talking with all of you. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure to make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Basketball with Josh Lloyd. He hosts the #1 daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. This is David Ramil signing off for now. Thank you so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.